What's going on, Kyle?
Not a whole lot, like usual.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Nothing at all?
But we're looking official.
Fish. Oh.
A bundle of fish.
Because today we're talking about fish.
That's correct.
Fishy fish. We're talking specifically about reef fish because last time we talked about coral.
Reefs.
Reefs. Yeah.
Coral reefs.
Coral reefs. Well,
Now
mainly coral.
Now we're going to complete the ecosystem and the little city underwater.
Yes, the little underwater city of fish and coral.
Now we're going to talk about the citizens, not the buildings.
That's true.
The underwater highways.
Yeah, so, I mean, just to start it off, what's your favorite kind of reef fish? I know you have lots of favorites, but...
I'm going to have to go with some form of a parrotfish.
Oh, why a parrotfish?
They make sand.
And how do they make sand, Kyle?
They poop out coral.
Exactly. One of the very few fish that actually eat coral.
And
Kind of interesting.
Sustenance from it.
Yeah, kind of an interesting fish. I do like parrotfish as
They
well.
have very human-like teeth. They've got that little...
Yeah, they have the two front teeth.
The gap, yeah.
That's all they want for
And they
Christmas.
you can, it's one of the few fish you can hear miles away too.
Crunching?
So, yeah, if there's
Yeah.
like a school of them, you can hear them crunching away.
Yep.
Which I thought was pretty funny.
Yep. The most well-known fish is probably the clownfish, thanks to Disney
Yeah, that's for sure.
and Finding Nemo.
And pet stores.
And that show did actually a really good job of explaining a symbiotic relationship that they have with anemones, which is something you kind of find a lot of in reef environment.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the whole reef environment itself being an ecosystem is, they went there for,
Yeah.
And
It's very rare in the wild to find two animals that are living together that are benefiting each other.
yeah, it's one of the few relationships.
Yeah,
Is,
and there's
anemones
a
and
lot
clowns.
seems like there's a lot of them. I know gobies are another type of little tiny reef fish that dwell mostly on the bottom, but they actually work with shrimp.
Yeah.
And they work with these little like bulldozer type of shrimp that actually dig their little burrows for them. But since the shrimp can't see very well, they'll use the fish as their eyes.
Really?
Yeah.
They just sit there and...
Yeah, and they just sit there, and so if the fish sees a predator coming, he'll twitch or whatever and tell the shrimp, "Hey, get back in the hole."
Go
and
home.
they'll both scurry back into their hole. And in the
I didn't know
meantime, the shrimp is in there digging its little home for the fish and the shrimp to live in.
I never knew that, and I always knew there was a symbiotic between shrimp and fish in general, as they'll clean them, and they'll,
Yeah, that's another big one.
you see a lot of shrimp going in and out of mouths of fish and stuff like that, picking up parasites.
Parasites, dead skin and stuff like that. Yeah,
You see them on sharks too. Sharks have a lot of fish that hang around them,
Mm-hmm.
and even the big, like the whale sharks and stuff, they have tons of fish that'll like hang out in its mouth,
yeah,
just picking off nastiness.
yeah. The shrimp will actually set up cleaning stations, basically, where they'll just kind of perch underneath the coral or a rock or something, and the fish will swim up and just sit there for a minute.
Yeah, it's like a underwater car wash.
It is. It's like a little car wash for the fish, and it's awesome. It's like, I mean, how cool is that to have two animals that can't communicate but literally live off of each other?
Yeah.
Like the shrimp gets food, and the fish makes sure he doesn't have any parasites. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, if there's one thing we can learn as humans from fish, is we can work together.
Exactly.
Oh,
yes. I love working together. But yeah, that's I think one of the coolest things about reefs for me is just how many of those relationships there are. We talked about it last episode with the coral, like all in itself being a symbiotic relationship, but all the fish and stuff working together too is pretty cool. So we talked about clownfish. We talked about parrotfish.
Well,
Any
you
other
didn't-
fish you want to talk about?
You want to talk about your favorite fish? You didn't mention yours.
I don't really have a favorite fish.
You have to.
Oh man.
You're not in elementary school
I
anymore.
don't know, dude. I like them all.
What's your what? Come on,
I do. I really do like them all.
engineer gobies.
Yeah.
Sand
Okay.
sector
So
lawnmower
gobies are pretty cool. Only because there's so many different types and they all have little jobs. It seems like they're all little like worker bees, and it's awesome.
I think you like their big old mouths too.
Some of them do have big mouths that they use to like dig out the sand and stuff. Other ones clean other fish. The engineer gobies will actually clean other fish, just like those shrimp, which is pretty cool.
Well, engineer gobies get mistaken a lot of the time for eels too, which I find funny.
Yeah. Engineer
they
gobies get very, very long,
Long and thin.
super
yeah.
crazy looking. Those are super fun. But
Those are some of my favorites. I always enjoyed seeing those in the.
I just like how many different types of fish there are on a reef.
I just like the color too.
And species. I think there's like 1,500 different species of fish living on a reef.
Is there subspecies too though? Because I feel like that's a small number. I don't know. Comparatively, I feel like that's a small number.
1,500? That's a lot.
Yeah, but I guess, yeah. I don't know. You just seem like there would be more.
Well, there's more types of fish, but they might not all be living on the same reef,
Yeah, true.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could have 6,000 different types of reef fish, but they probably don't all live in the same area.
Yeah, okay.
They live in different areas all over the world. But yeah, so that was a really cool fish. Speaking of our last episode, real quick, I did find something that was super cool, kind of interesting, talking about coral again. And it was a way to deal with that water temperature issue we were talking about. So remember, the water temperature affects the algae and the coral, bleaching it basically and killing it. I guess scientists are kind of working on a way to figure out how to bring the cold water from the bottom of the ocean up to the reefs to actually cool the reef water.
That seems very...
And I guess if that's done for roughly 2 hours a day, it actually increases the percentages by like 60% of the coral living.
What are they throwing down there? Giant turbines that are like...
That it didn't get into, but I guess they're researching on if it would even be effective to begin with, and the answer is yes. So if we can figure out a way to bring the cold water from the bottom of the ocean up to cool the reefs, to cool the surface water.
That sounds very scary. I feel like that's going to cause some...
some other issues. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, but it's still, I mean,
That
the
or
fact
it's
that we're
gonna-
going to that length to try to save these coral reefs just shows you how important they are.
that depth.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Deep water.
Oh.
See, what I was saying is if that's gonna start stirring up stuff down there, who knows what's gonna shoot up back to the top.
Well, it's also going to push all that warm water somewhere too.
Yeah,
All that warm water might go down.
Down.
Or other places that it's not supposed to be, but
that we don't even know about because we know more about our space than we do. Our
That
space,
is-
not our space.
that is true. But yeah, that was super interesting. I just wanted to throw that in there from the last episode.
No,
that
I'm
they're
curious
even getting to that level of having to think about ways to literally man-made, like, cool the water, but in a man-made way. Like
it's
that's
it's
like
like
what?
that Futurama episode where they drop a giant ice cube in the ocean to try and cool it down.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh man,
Just a giant ice cube.
yeah. So in the episode, they just keep it's like this documentary of global warming, and this is taking place in the year 3000. Like the ice cube gets bigger and bigger and bigger. They're just dropping in the ocean
Oh, geez.
to like try and cool it down.
Is it a saltwater ice cube? I hope, because otherwise it would throw the salinity way off.
It's a cartoon. They didn't get into that depth, but I kind of chuckled when they handled global warming.
I mean, SpongeBob is a cartoon, and it gets into depth
with global warming.
with fish.
Oh, with fish, yeah. I mean, one thing I did find out about, which was funny, they do talk about pollution, or they do touch on pollution in SpongeBob, is if you never realized that the homes, or like the metal buildings in Bikini Bottom, those are mufflers to cars.
Oh my God, they are.
Yeah.
Oh,
Those
that's
are
crazy.
mufflers to cars, and then...
I also realized a couple years ago or whatever, the Chum Bucket, which is the restaurant that nobody ever wants to go to,
Yeah.
they don't want to go to it because it's literally a chum bucket,
Yeah,
which is
which
full of fish
dead
guts.
fish, yeah.
Like, that is insane.
Well, and they
That's
go
funny.
to they go to the Krusty Krab because it's a crab trap and it usually has bait in it, like fresh. Like if you think about it that way.
I love going back and watching kids shows and just getting all that like hilarious. I think you talked about it last episode too with Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
But it's just all that stuff you wouldn't pick up on as a kid.
Yeah. Get a
Just
much
going-
better
yeah,
understanding.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. So anyways, back to fish. I found another article that was pretty interesting. The big thing with reefs is you have to remember there's a food chain, just like any other environment, right?
Mhm.
So you got the small fish who are eaten by bigger fish, who are eaten by bigger fish, who are eaten by bigger fish, right? We get all the way up to probably like sharks, basically. You have reef sharks. So the issue that we're having today is basically with the noise from boats.
Yeah,
So
noise pollution.
noise pollution is a big thing around coral reefs. And what's happening is that noise pollution is actually changing the behavior of the baby fish, of the small fish and their children. Children?
Eggs.
Eggs? Babies.
Fry is the
Is that the
term for
yeah,
baby
yeah,
fish.
yeah.
Fry. Yeah.
But it's affecting the way that they live. So normally what they'll do is they'll go out and they'll swim around and they'll eat things. Smaller plankton things, right? What's happening is because of the noise pollution, it's actually scaring them and it's keeping them in a smaller area.
Uh-huh.
And because of that, they're not actually learning how to live in the reef environment. They're not learning how to avoid predators
Oh,
at an
interesting.
early age. So we're actually losing more fish
Well, and you're
because they're not learning how to live to be larger fish.
I think you're losing a biodiversity too, and if they're not leaving a certain area, then you're just not going to reproduce and get that gene mixture that you need to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think without the noise pollution, I think they lose like 60% of their offspring
Oh, geez.
die just from getting eaten.
Yeah.
But with the noise pollution, I mean that number can climb up pretty quick, and that's dangerous, getting up into the 70 or 80%.
Dang, I knew noise pollution affected whales and migrations and stuff like that, but I didn't think it affected coral reefs.
Right?
I mean,
It affects it too at like the lowest stage.
Yeah.
Like if you start with the baby fish, that's going to affect the big fish eventually.
Yeah,
And
it's
in a bigger way.
chain
Reaction.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Gosh. A domino effect.
Yeah. But that was super cool.
Yeah, it's interesting to think. And then I mean everything really relies on the coral reef too. I mean even they touch on it in a couple different ways, as like the drop off. You have smaller fish and the big fish feed off of that, and like all that nutrients comes from there.
Yep.
So I mean it acts. Reefs act as like a natural like weather barrier too. I mean,
oh yeah, definitely.
The Great Barrier Reef too, they're stating is, once it starts just basically disappearing, like there's going to be, water levels at different places and islands will basically start disappearing, and a lot of that erosion will just start increasing.
Well, and they're finding, kind of going back to coral again, they're finding that it's not just erosion, but it's also ocean acidification, which we've talked about before, eating away calcium carbonate structures, right? Out of the plankton. Well, that's what reefs are made out of. That's what the skeleton of coral is made out of, which is the reef structure. And so they're actually having times where reefs are collapsing because the glue, that calcium that holds them together, is physically disappearing.
See, I thought you meant like collapsing.
Because,
we know they're...
No. Like physically disappearing and collapsing down because the calcified structure that's holding them up, that's creating them, is just getting eaten away by acid. That's crazy. Acid levels in the water. Isn't that crazy?
It's like basically imploding in on itself.
Yeah,
it's just...
I mean, you said eventually they're going to disappear, but they're literally disappearing. Like they're literally crumbling into sand. Yeah, like that's scary.
Sand is old coral reefs.
Yeah,
and rock and tumbled rock and thrashed around.
Yeah, but can you imagine?
And parrotfish poop.
Just to have a reef just collapse and just disappear off the face of the planet.
I couldn't even imagine the sound that would produce. Well, I guess it's probably happening on a very...
It's a very slow. It's a very slow rate, but still, I mean. To have rocks being literally eaten away because of the acid levels in the ocean, the pH level of the ocean.
Just because of a huge combination of effects that we've caused and sped up.
Yeah,
I guess we could say haven't caused. We've definitely sped it up. And I think that's the huge argument is people are like, hey, global warming can't exist and blah, blah, blah. This is naturally happening in blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, okay, we're speeding it up like drastically. If you look at the polar ice caps, in the past, like they have that graph. It's always a graph, I
mean, you have to look at humans from a biological standpoint, right? Every other species has a species cap. There's a point in which that species can no longer reproduce at the level that they are because they don't have the food source to sustain them. Humans have the ability to raise that bar. We have the ability to create more food, genetically modified food that allows us to grow at a higher population rate.
Right.
And we can just keep going. We haven't hit that level yet. And that's scary because that's not how the planet is balanced. The planet is balanced to have everybody have their own little section of what they're using and have that be a limited resource on purpose in order to not overpopulate the planet.
Right.
The fact that we can mess with that is throwing everything off. That's really what it is. It's the fact that we have the ability to mess with nature.
In a sense, we can make something almost out of nothing.
Yeah, we can manufacture stuff that is not normally there, basically, from a scientific level.
Everything you manufacture has a waste. There is nothing that's... Every form of energy that we use has a waste product to it at this point. Yeah. There's no... what's the word I'm looking for?
Byproduct?
Yeah, there's byproduct, but it's a source of energy that's ever-evolving that doesn't need energy to produce it. Anyway, Nikola Tesla was working on it, but, I mean... Don't even worry about it. We're over it.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't help you there.
Yeah, it's okay. Because, if you talk about, people will say, well, we have dams and stuff, and those are, that's just using water and turning a turbine. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I understand that, but you're damming up a river that leads to the ocean. That's okay,
so kind of like a cause and effect type thing. Like even green energy has its downsides.
Yeah, I'm looking, I'm still trying to think of that. It's...
I can't think of that form of energy. I hate it when that happens.
Nikola Tesla was working on it. He was trying to create a form of energy that didn't...
Like perpetual energy? Is that what you mean?
I think. I know it's like making me wiggle, man.
like where you can get energy out of nothing.
yeah, it's
Yeah, so that's a law of physics, is that you can't create something out of nothing.
right, and that's what that's our
As far as energy
problem
goes.
as humans is there's always a product and it's always waste, and it's
Yeah.
seemingly that the ocean has become the number one
Right.
other than oxygen and air.
Yeah, it's Yeah.
Perpetual motion.
perpetual motion.
Yeah, it came to me.
Thanks to our assistant sitting behind the scenes there for helping us out on that one.
Yeah.
So back to the reefs. So we know the environment has a huge impact. We know humans have a huge impact. And another way humans have kind of impacted it, is with invasive species. Invasive species is a huge topic when it comes to the downfall of coral reefs.
Let's talk about the biggest one that I know about anyway. I don't know.
What's the biggest one you know of?
Lionfish.
Lionfish. Yes, that is
There
a huge
is-
one.
Florida has a lionfish season,
Yep.
which I find this kind of funny. And one of the reasons they go out and hunt lionfish is so they can get a larger number of limit for lobster season. So the more lionfish you hunt,
Really?
the more lobster you're allowed to take the
So
next
it's an
season.
incentive to get them out there to hunt lionfish.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
Wow.
literally gotten to the point where like lionfish are so invasive in Florida to the point where people are literally developing handguns underwater to shoot lionfish.
Yeah. I know there's no limit on the take, and it doesn't seem to matter how you take them.
No, and
there's
it's
very few laws as far as that goes.
and the reason they're so invasive is one, they reproduce very fast.
Yep.
They reproduce a lot at the same time, and
Yep.
they eat the smaller reef fish. There's
Yeah.
no natural predator to them in Florida.
That's a big thing, is there's no natural predator. It is kind of interesting though. There was an article that I read that actually showed that they are selective in what they eat.
Yeah.
So they're not actually choosing just any small reef fish. They're looking for specific reef fish.
Yeah,
And
I
they're
s-
eating just those, which is super weird.
I forget what documentary I saw on that, but yeah, they literally were catching lionfish, cutting them open, and seeing what
And
fish
seeing
were
what
inside.
they ate. Yeah.
Because lionfish just gulp.
Right.
It's just a big old gulper, and
Right.
they get relatively big. I mean, it's hard because they're gorgeous fish. I mean, there's a reason
They're cool looking.
in the hobbyist industry they're very popular, but holy moly, they are beyond invasive in Florida and the
Yeah.
Keys. It's just, I mean, it's weird to see them underwater because they look so cool, but then like you look at it from the other end of the standpoint,
Mhm.
and it's just like, wow, like that's bad. I mean, dude's pulling up like hundreds at a time. Like in
Yeah.
these, they have like special designed equipment now, like these PVC tubes, right, underwater that basically have like a rubber membrane,
Uh-huh.
so they don't get stung.
Really?
And now a lot of restaurants in Florida, like in Miami, are trying to find out cool ways to utilize lionfish meat.
Yeah.
And because they have such an abundance of it, and they're trying to get rid of it.
I know it tastes pretty good, right?
Yeah,
It's a
people-
pretty good tasting fish,
the
I
problem
believe.
is the preparation time is huge
It takes
because
a while because you have to deal with all the
spines.
poisonous
Yeah.
parts.
very poisonous and they're sketchy.
But they are cool looking.
Yeah,
I
they're-
love the look at them.
All the spines
Yeah.
and the flowiness, and
Yep.
yeah,
And the way they hunt their fish is super cool too. It kind of reminds me of a cat. I just realized that's probably why they call them lionfish.
how to enlighten.
Just the way they hunt. I can just picture them being like a cat hunting their prey, just kind of like crawling along,
Oh yeah, they kind of
kind of
stick
like
on the
kind of just like sneaking up nice and slow, and then quick attack.
They're extremely fast too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's lightning fast. Like
Yeah.
you have to like get a slow motion camera to see them. It's just all of a sudden that little reef fish is there, and then it's not, and,
Yeah.
and then the lionfish is like,
Gone.
tasty.
Those poor little reef fish that are stuck in their homes because of the boats driving over the top of them.
Yeah,
They're too scared to venture out, and then the lionfish comes around and he's like, "Hey, friend, what's going on?"
this looks like a buffet to me.
That's sad.
Yeah,
There's so many things that are going on with reefs that are just like,
it just
how
against
do you,
them.
yeah, how do you even get past that? I mean, could you imagine if that was happening to us as like a human race? Like, not only did we have predators that weren't supposed to be here that were just picking us off like no tomorrow, but like to also have environmental changes that were throwing us off.
Yeah, Mother Nature, step up your game.
No, let's not. The 2020 is enough for now. Not everything at once, please.
We haven't even gotten to 2021, so
Well, hopefully it's better than this year.
yeah,
I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be.
yeah.
I think we need to bounce back eventually. But yeah, so lionfish, big issue. But the fact that they actually select what they eat is pretty interesting. I was very intrigued with that.
Yeah.
I kind of figured that they just ate whatever they wanted because they weren't supposed to be there to begin with. So they're like,
Yeah.
what do they care?
And the crazy part is they were literally invasive because of the hobbyist side. I mean, they were released into Florida and then just
Yeah,
Like-
unfortunately, there's the human impact again.
I mean, going into like freshwater, you even have the the Asian carp out here in the rivers in like
Oh, really?
like Mississippi, Alabama. I don't know if that's exactly where they are, but there's a lot of rivers, and
Yeah.
I mean it's they're so invasive. I forget which, I think it's just called like the silver carp or something like that. And it's literally to the point where they've annihilated the river other than them.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where like even the oxygen levels in the water are like dropping because they're so abundant and they're producing
Really?
so much waste in these rivers.
Yikes.
And guys are literally going out there with electrodes, sticking them in the water to get them fly out of the water. I don't know if you've seen that. Where the people,
No.
they're catching them out of the air, they're launching them out of the water
What?
with electrodes, and like literally just catching them. And these guys
Just to get rid of them.
yeah, and
Wow.
now they're using, they're trying to find ways to use it. And one of the biggest ones is fertilizer. They just grind them up and fertilize fields with them
Interesting.
as like
Huh.
a natural fertilizer.
That's pretty cool. I mean, at least they found something to use them for, but
But it was like, it was introduced something in like the late 80s or early 90s, and now it's like they're like unstoppable. I mean,
Huh.
it's a crazy force.
because there's no predator, I'm assuming.
No, and they just eat everything in the river.
That's crazy. It's almost like you'd want to find a predator that would eat them, but at the same point, that predator is probably also invasive.
Yeah.
And then you're just going to have to keep going up the food chain until you're throwing great white sharks into the river.
Oh God, I think that would be bull sharks. They can
Yeah, they can
they're
actually go up rivers.
upper
They can,
brackish river. Yeah,
yeah,
That's
they
crazy
can
to
they
me.
can deal with freshwater environments, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. That doesn't happen in a lot of fish.
Maybe we just like bioengineer like a scuba kit for a bull shark to go through these rivers.
No, enough bioengineering stuff. That would get dangerous.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're gonna have a Sharknado going on.
Oh God. I mean, off topic of invasive species here in California, we have the eucalyptus tree. It's actually an invasive
Is
species.
it invasive?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is not meant to be here in California.
Huh.
It's the
Where did
eucalyptus
it come
tree.
from?
Australia.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and even palm trees. Palm trees are not supposed to be here in Southern California.
No, really?
Yeah, palm
That's
trees
like
are.
our theme song.
I know, and palm trees are from deserts. Like they're not.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
See,
trees.
I had no idea,
That's
and I live here.
that's humans for you. I mean, we find something we like and we bring it here and don't realize that it's super invasive.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, we are shipping stuff literally across the world every day.
Yeah.
Huh.
Which is funny because now we have, I mean, on the fishing side and everything like that, we have Homeland Security, which is literally takes their job very serious here in the United States anyway. And they go through and pull out even just food. So in case it has like any parasites, anything like that, and you can't now because of the 2001, the anti-terrorist acts, you cannot bring food into the United States from another country.
Really?
They'll pull it right out of your bag and it's like $1,000 fine.
Oh,
You know, you have hundreds of dogs, and
Dang.
JFK airport is like one of the biggest ones for, and they have little dogs,
Just
and they have
food.
like a whole army of little dogs that sniff your bags and pull out food. And it looks delicious. Like I was watching the video, and the lady is like, "Yeah, all this food looks amazing, but I know
Oh,
what it's,
man.
you know, how dangerous it is to our to the crops of the United States."
yeah. So does that mean? So could I like go online and buy like French bread from France and get that shipped to me?
So yeah, it's if you have like a license to do it and you go through customs and all that. But I'm
okay.
talking about like straight through like luggage and
Like
stuff.
putting it in your luggage and taking it home on
Exactly,
vacation or
yeah,
whatever?
because
Ah,
customs is there to be set up to scrutinize and do all that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
quarantine if it needs to
Okay.
be and stuff like that.
Got it,
So
got
yeah,
it.
most major countries have that set up.
so I can't bring home wine or cheese.
I don't know the stipulations. It was just like, I mean, like she was just pulling out like massive amounts of food, and I mean there were fish in there too. People were trying to put fish in their bags, like
Huh? Like dead
in a
fish?
like in a bag of water.
Like live fish.
Yeah,
You know, I've heard stories about people doing that, going on vacation and like trying to bring home coral for their tanks and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I can't believe that. Like
There's
that stuff
avenues-
it's so sensitive. Like it's even hard to keep it alive when you get it shipped here overnight. I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine trying to take it from the ocean, like on a dive, put it into some sort of bag, keep it alive long enough to get onto the plane and back home,
yeah. Well,
and
I
then
know,
to put it into your tank and expect it to live. Like, what are you thinking?
there was a big YouTuber in the saltwater business, and you know him. He was doing his dive trips out to wherever, and that was like one of his like advertisements is like, you pick a fish or a coral and we'll have it, you know, sent home through the proper avenues. And he got so much flack for
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure he got flack, but at least that's like the right way to do it. Like,
Yeah.
take the coral and actually have it shipped overnight,
That's the
separate from
correct-
your luggage.
That's the correct way to do it. I don't
But
condone it.
no,
like
not
we
at
said,
all.
like,
That's
stick to the homegrown stuff.
yeah.
but-
There's literally no reason to be taking fish or coral
Yeah.
off of the reefs anymore.
and that's why he got so much flack. He did it for like the first one, and now it's just classified as the dive trip.
Yeah, there's plenty of science and research going into breeding of fish specifically because fish are a lot harder to work with than coral as far as breeding goes.
Australia, speaking of fish and like trying to farm them, is trying to farm tuna, like on land, not like
Interesting.
in, you know, big nets. You know, we have
Yeah.
hatcheries and stuff, which are a huge, another issue is hatcheries. But Australia is literally having or has these giant facilities set up with massive tanks growing or, farming tuna,
Like full-blown tuna.
full-blown yellowfin tuna.
I kind of want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I can pull it up for you later, but
I bet
it's like,
that's super cool looking.
it is super, super cool looking. And they said it is one of the most challenging things to do.
Yeah. I know, because I'm sure they're trying to breed them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the hard part, I mean, tuna is like the one of the number one anyway, like targeted fish in the world. I mean, you've got blue, yellow, dogtooth, like it's always a prize catch.
Yeah.
And like there's always those documentaries you see of the Australian boats going out there and they like literally drag these massive nets and they'll go and catch schools and then just like literally they're going like hundreds of thousands of miles off the coast and then just bringing them in.
Yeah, it's sad to see. I know food is important, but the way that we're going about fishing is just the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, and that brings it to hatcheries too. Like even on our coasts, they produce these hatcheries that just hang right outside right off the coast.
Yeah,
and that's the very wrong way to do it, is because they produce so much waste because they're putting artificial foods in the water,
exactly.
Pesticides, and it's affecting everything underneath it and around it.
Yep.
And then it goes right back into the ecosystem and stuff like that, and that's in Alaska, Oregon, and Washington. Well, actually, I should have gone Alaska, Washington, Oregon. They have these hatcheries. I mean, if you look underneath, it is just all these dead fish. And recently, in the past couple of years, they actually had one of these nets break open, and all of this, GMO fish went out and started going upstream. It was salmon. And they started going upstream, and they just, you have this fish that's basically genetically modified.
Right.
It couldn't reproduce productively with the native species and wiped it out.
Oh, geez.
And so now there's this huge issue of rivers up there that are just having this huge issue of escapee fish.
Right.
Right. But that's what the Australia was all about, is because they obviously know Australia, they got the Great Barrier Reef to worry about.
Right.
And they're one of the biggest catchers of tuna because they have the tuna down there. And so that's why they set up this whole facility on shore, and they did it responsibly. So they're not doing any GMO, anything, stuff like that. They're not adding any crazy pesticides to the waters or anything like that. They're trying to do it in the most wholesome way. Yeah. And trying to take the impact off of nature. Of course, there's going to be downsides to it, as always, but I just thought that was the coolest thing.
That's super cool.
These massive facilities for tuna, and the tuna are just like doing these giant circles.
I'm sure that's so cool looking.
Huge tanks.
That's super cool.
Like if you go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, it's like they have a couple tunas in there.
Yeah.
And with schools of other things like giant sharks, it is like the coolest tank they have there.
Yeah.
Is seeing a tuna swim.
Yeah. You never really do get to see them actually swimming.
No.
But that's pretty cool. I like seeing the fact that they can take a fish and breed it actually in a safe and
it wasn't
environmentally friendly manner.
It wasn't until recently too in the hobbyist business is that yellow tangs now are captive bred.
Yep.
And the hard part is because it takes so much to do right now anyway, and so much money, effort, time. They're very expensive, and it's of course that's where people are like, oh, I'll just buy a wild caught one over. At this point, spend the money.
I mean, even with clownfish, you look at clownfish and you have, designer clownfish basically that are in the hobby now.
Yeah, and they're just pulling out the good ones. And
it's basically like dogs. Like you crossbreed these clownfish to give them long, like beta fish like tails and stuff like that, which is super cool, the fact that we can do that. But one, we have to be careful about that as far as them getting back into the wild, because they shouldn't be here. We created them. And two, we have to realize that if we make these more expensive, then people are just going to start buying the wild caught ones again.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you have to figure out a way to breed them and provide them for the hobby, but at the same time, make them cheaper and easier to get than the wild caught ones. Otherwise, you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the things that the tuna documentary touched on was that, their tuna is expensive, but, it's a safe and sound product that you're not pulling from the ocean directly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And hopefully people realize that that's a thing worth spending the money on, but unfortunately it's not.
Yeah.
A lot of people just say, "Oh, well, it's more expensive. I can't afford that." I mean, look at just farmed foods,
Yeah.
The organic foods are more expensive than normal GMO ridden foods.
Yeah.
Why? Because it takes more time. It takes more patience, and it takes a lot more skill.
Yeah, and study and technology, and it's kind of crazy.
And that's one of the downsides about trying to go environmentally friendly, unfortunately, is it's
expensive
harder
right now.
It's harder. It's harder to do on the scale that we need.
Yeah.
Than it is to just push a bunch of pesticides in there and call it a day.
Yeah. And that's with the reefs too. I mean, we talked about it a little bit on the last one, is how a lot of these small communities or tribes or villages on the coasts were utilizing just rod and reel nets and even going down there and spearfishing, and now they're using blast techniques and they're just dropping down dynamite, or they're getting more and more technology, and they're
I want to meet the person that thought that was a good idea. Like the first person that was like, oh, let's take some dynamite and throw it into the ocean and see what happens.
It literally is a stick of nitroglycerin in a fucking PVC pipe. And sorry, it just irks me so bad. Like it's
That's
just
crazy.
And they just bloop, and it's just poof, and then they go down there and just pick up the pieces.
Yeah, that's not.
And it's not conducive to anything.
No. No.
I don't even know what kind of chemicals that throws off. I mean, a blast underwater.
I don't know about chemicals, but that's not a good thing. Explosions underwater are very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, just the percussion wave itself is just, there's a reason.
And I think about all the fish and stuff that, are on the border of that don't die from it, but now they're permanently injured from
swim bladder. I mean, the biggest effect it has on it is the way you see these fish, they weren't even dead. It's just their swim bladders were burst and they would just start floating up.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
For everybody that doesn't know, so fish, the way that they control their buoyancy is by having a bladder full of air inside of them. And basically that controls how high or low they want to go. When you have an explosion underwater, what happens is there's no release. There's nowhere for that water to go. Water doesn't compress. So you have that shock wave that's traveling miles and miles and miles, depending on how big this explosion is.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't dissipate. And when water hits air, it's going to compress that air. When you compress that air, if you have something like an organ, like a swim bladder that's trying to hold that air in,
it's just gone.
It's just going to explode.
Yep.
And so all those fish all of a sudden have no way to control their buoyancy anymore.
And it's a horrible thing to see. They're just flapping around and going all crazy.
It's basically like they burst their insides.
Yeah.
Like that's a tough way to go.
Yeah. That's
and
exactly
it's
what
not
it
going to
is.
kill them. It's just literally going to make them float to the surface.
Yep. Or sink, and you never see them again, and it's just...
That's the other thing is they're not always going to float.
No.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah, so they're probably not even getting the full catch from what they're going after.
No, I mean, think about it too. Is if you drop it into an actual school of fish, like how many are actually like going to be repairable, not repairable, but usable to your benefit?
Yeah, that's messed up.
Yep.
I can't believe that was even like a
blast fishing
an idea that somebody had. I thought it was a good one. Like, does nobody really think about the future at all when they come up with stuff like this?
See, it's hard. It's like, it's such a hard thing to I understand it, and it's like I hate it because the community that was doing it is so small. Yeah. I mean, they barely had any technology, and then they get introduced to this single thing that works extremely well.
Yeah.
It's like basically the explosion of cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically humans raising that bar of population again. Yeah. It's raising that limit. All of a sudden, it's a small community that has more food. Now it's going to be a bigger community because they have more reasons to support it.
Exactly.
It's literally what humans have been doing forever.
Yeah, I mean,
like literally since cavemen.
Yeah.
It's manufacturing stuff that should not be there in order to provide an easier way to have a bigger population.
And eliminating things that get in your way.
Yeah. Look at farming just to begin with. Like literally farming is a manufactured way of making more food to provide more food for a bigger population.
And you're tearing apart natural lands and natural environments of the natural living things there.
Name another species that does that to this planet.
There's not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's messed up, dude.
I don't think there is.
And the fact that we don't even think about it.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Well, the hard part is there's people that think about it and they speak up about it, but it's just the corruption of the world and the corporations that...
Well, even back then, though, it's like the first people that were getting into farming, I don't blame them. It's not like you're thinking, oh, yeah, in whatever thousands of years, this is going to really affect this planet.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what they're thinking. They're thinking, oh, sweet, I can go out to the field now and get my corn instead of having to go and find it somewhere.
Yeah. Well, the hard part was his farming was not developed, but was established as a means to support yourself.
Yeah.
It was never meant to be this crazy, massive industrial scale that it is today, feeding billions of people. It was always, you grew your own stuff. I mean, the first settlers came and did that. And of course, it was like less than a couple of years where they realized we can make a profit off of this. And then, of course, you got plantations and all this stuff. But, I mean, the original ones, it's what it was. I mean, we did another different type of podcast. It's whatever's in your way, you're going to stop it. If you're the king or the pope, you're going to knock what's in your way out of the way and move on.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately that's the mentality that's destroying our earth.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But back to coral reefs, because that's the topic that we're on. Man, we go on some crazy tangents.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really all comes back to the fact that we have these issues and we need to fix these issues. But unfortunately, the fixes for these issues are both expensive and very, very complicated.
Yeah. I think,
It's-
and that's
it's
what
not
shies
an
a lot of
easy
people
job.
away. And
Yeah.
it shies us away. We can't afford electric cars. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And I mean,
we talk about it every single day. We're like, that would be so sick.
it would be cool. But even still, electric cars aren't the answer.
No.
We've talked about that before. The batteries in electric cars, where do they go?
Where's
Into
your
the
power
dump.
come from?
Where
Yeah.
does the power come from? Coal plants.
So
It's not an end-all solution, unfortunately, and hopefully someday it will be. Hopefully there's a way that we can all work together to figure that out. But yeah, back to coral reefs. Kind of a cool thing here. So apparently, big herbivore fish are really good for reefs. Apparently, yeah. So big plant-eating fish like parrotfish are really good for reefs. It actually helps the biodiversity. Now,
Yeah.
why do you think it helps? I'm curious. Why do you think a parrotfish helps with the biodiversity of a reef in general?
they take down dead stuff. They don't necessarily target the dead coral, but they're going to eat the coral, and then they provide a natural fertilizer and they poop it out, and that's it's spreading possible polyps and seeds around.
Yeah. So the way that it works, and not only with parrotfish, but with other fish that also eat algae and stuff like that, it provides more room for new coral and new organisms to grow. So you get more coral growing, and now all of a sudden you have more fish that can live in that coral. And so really big algae-eating fish or big parrotfish that eat coral actually are kind of a good thing, which you wouldn't think. You would think, oh, no, there's a fish that eats coral. That's not good. The coral's all dying. Yes, but it eats the coral in ways that it allows other corals from underneath to grow up and get bigger and provide more homes for other fish and other symbiotic relationships. It's kind of cool. It's kind of the opposite of what you would think would happen with fish that eat coral.
Yeah, it's you'd think we'd want to stop it, but no, that's why I love parrotfish. They're just so interesting, and they're freaking beaks, man.
Yeah, I mean, I love them. They're super cool.
I just love watching the videos of hearing them crunch.
Yeah. There's another thing that eats coral that is also invasive, and that is the crown of thorn starfish.
Oh,
have you ever heard of those?
We have invasive starfish out here in California.
So these starfish actually eat the coral reefs, and they are super duper invasive because they have no predators.
Yeah, I mean,
well, turns out, good news, actually, finally for once, there's fish that are actually adapting to start eating these starfish.
nice.
Yeah, so the reefs are actually starting to save themselves, and they found this out by looking at the feces of the fish.
Oh, and seeing what's
and
coming
seeing
out.
what's coming out of their diets, and they're
And they could see
noticing
starfish?
Yeah, they're noticing it in fish, even like damsels,
Really?
which are kind of goby-ish. They're a little more.
They're like
They're
max
small,
they
but
get is
they're a
like-
little bit more pelagic than gobies. They'll swim up a little bit higher.
They're like the most common thing you see like in documentaries. They're the little ones, and they're like always in piles. This
Yeah. They're little. They kind of look
Yeah.
like little coins almost when they're swimming.
Well, another
They're kinda
invasive
shiny.
species we have out here is urchins.
Yeah. Out here, urchins are huge. Literally, their population is huge.
Yeah, I mean, and it's even to the point where it is such a delicacy. People
Yeah.
go out and palm up thousands at a time, but they are just so gnarly.
Yeah, and their main source of food is unfortunately
The
kelp.
stalks of kelp beds. Yeah,
Yep. So they'll eat the bottom of the kelp because they live on the bottom of the ocean, and all that kelp just floats up to the surface and
just
dies.
sits there, rots and dies, and ruins it
Yeah.
all, and destroys.
Yeah, so
the whole-
they don't even get a full meal out of it. It's not like they start at the top and eat the whole thing, which would actually be kind of nice because then they would have more to eat. They wouldn't eat as many pieces, but
Well, and they're driving out the natural urchins that we had out here.
yeah.
So,
So it's another invasive species because once again, humans didn't actually bring urchins to California. Urchins have always been in California. The problem is humans took away their only natural predator.
Right.
Well, one of their only natural predators, which is sea otters.
Yep.
We started hunting sea otters for their coats and their
I forget
lovely, cute fur.
how far south otters came. They came.
Yeah,
we
they were
used
all
to
the way
have
down
them-
here.
Yeah, we had them all the way down here.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're so cute.
Dude, right? I
Oh,
love them.
man. We went
That's
to-
one of my favorite marine animals.
Well, we went
by
to
far.
when we took a trip up to Santa Cruz. The girlfriend and I, we stopped in Monterey just to see them in the little bay,
Yeah.
and they're so cute. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just I wish somehow we could just bring them back down.
I mean, it's possible. It's definitely possible to start moving that population, but the issue is that population is so slow in recouping from what we did to them.
Well,
It's just that timeline isn't
Yeah.
comparing to what we need it to.
Well, yeah, I mean,
we need a faster timeline.
They were pulling otters out of the water as much as they're pulling fish.
Yeah.
And it's an otter in its lifespan will only have 3 to 4 pups.
Right.
So it's,
Yeah.
you know, you
Yeah.
take out one, you just took out like a huge
An
number.
entire lifeline.
Yeah.
The thing that bugs me about the urchins out here is we do still have, so there's multiple predators. There was the sea otters, and then there's a sheep's head,
Yeah.
which is a fish. That's one of the main reasons that I have such issues with people shooting sheep's head or catching sheep's head out here. Yes, I know we have both shot sheep's head.
I
will admit that.
I have taken one.
And I hated it.
And it was, that was the last one I took.
I hated the one I shot.
Yeah. I got a really big one.
Yeah.
And then it was like, that was kind of like the stopping point for me. Because when you take a sheep head, you just took that male or female right out of their, out of that little zone. They stay within a reef their whole lifespan. And
they have single mates, correct?
They have single mates.
Yeah.
But the cool part is about this fish, which we've still managed to mess up the scale of, is sheep's head will actually change gender. I forget which way. Females can turn to males. So if you take a male out of their little zone and the females will recognize it, they're not spawning or mating in a certain amount of time. The females can actually start to change their actual hormones. That's what I'm looking for. And actually turn into a male and provide for that community around them, which I thought was the most interesting thing ever.
Super cool.
But it's still, that process takes about a month.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you know, how many are there? I mean, it's still, I go down to reefs and like the biggest sheep's head I see now is like it's tiny and they get huge. I mean, the one that I got, I think that was like 25 pounds. And like now I see them and they're like this big.
I still think California should just make them illegal. I think they should just add them to that list of fish that we cannot take.
Oh yeah.
I think that would really, really help the urchin population, which I think in turn would help the kelp forest, which in turn would help the other fish come back as well.
And they're beautiful fish too.
And they're super cool looking.
Black and red.
It drives me nuts when people catch them. Like on the fishing boats and stuff. They'll like grab them by the eyes to hold them up. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know. It hurts. It's something that has always bugged me.
Yeah, they're slow growing, they're slow producing,
yeah.
and they're beneficial to our ecosystem out here.
Yep.
I mean, everything's beneficial, but they're like crucial right now.
Yeah. Speaking of the sex change on the fish there, that's a little something that a lot of people don't know about Disney's Finding Nemo. So the dad, was his name Marlin?
Yeah.
Marlin.
Because he was a sport fish.
He should have been a female.
Yeah, as soon as
he should have been a female as soon as his wife died,
or
relatively soon after, because clownfish are also another one of those fish that do change sex.
Yeah,
there'll be basically one female for a bunch of different males, and as soon as that female dies, one of those other males will actually take place and turn into a female. So that's something they messed up on, and I think they should go back and fix it. Could you imagine?
Dude,
could you imagine they go back and change that?
Disney has destroyed so many actual stories and like fit it to their narrative.
I mean,
I could go on a tangent right now with a lot of them.
It's an entertainment company.
I understand.
They didn't make the film to match the biological.
No, that one I can understand a little bit more and be like, okay, yeah, it's a movie. Yeah. But the ones that kill me is like the real life story ones. Like, I'm not even gonna get to it, but I'll just mention Pocahontas. If you want to look at the real history of Pocahontas.
Oh yeah.
Golly, dude.
I mean, humans do that with everything, though, dude.
I know, but like,
look at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it's just saying is like Pocahontas is like one of the stories in the films. I'm just like,
yeah,
it's like so blatantly wrong and messed up. I'm just like, what did you do?
I mean, look at Lion King. Like, do they really think that those lions talk?
Do they really think? Oh man.
But yeah, I think that's funny that a lot of people don't know that is that Nemo's dad should have been his mom after his mom died. It's kind of probably be messed up.
That's like I said last time, when we go back and watch that film every time as adults, we learn.
Yeah, that's super fun.
Moral of the story is listen to our podcast before you watch Finding Nemo, or we'll let your kids watch it.
We'll give you the breakdown of everything you need to know about Finding Nemo in 10 minutes or more.
That'd be an interesting episode. We watch Finding Nemo and like break
Actually,
down.
It would be. It would be kind of
fun.
With
it or what's right. Like
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Or other
big
underwater. Is there any other underwater movies like that?
Free Willy.
I like that movie.
Why I guess they let him free.
That's
the whole point of Free Willy.
It's a very sad movie.
Yeah, it is.
Or Blackfish. That's a good one.
Oh. Okay. On that note,
another topic.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, as always, if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. I think we just hit 20 subscribers when we're recording this, so that's a big milestone for us. I know there's a lot of you that are watching these videos that are not subscribed. Super simple to make an account if you don't have a YouTube account. If you need help, let us know. We can help you. We can help you make an account so you can subscribe, so you can leave that like, so you can leave that comment, because it really does help us. If you're listening,
give us
not
a rating.
watching, you should give us a rating and then go check us out on YouTube and leave us a subscription as well.
Give
please.
us a rating and give us a like on podcast sites. That's what keeps us on the current and on the upcoming websites and pages.
Definitely.
And that gives us listeners. So
with that, I hope everybody has a happy holiday. We will see you.
Is it the week of Christmas? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is the week of Christmas. We're recording this way in advance because that's what we like to do.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone.
We will see everybody in 2021, I believe. I think that's our next episode.
Holy cannoli.
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. I don't
yes, sir.
All righty, guys.
We will see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a good one.